In this lesson, we'll learn how to create a render showing a section of the building. Now, this is a very interesting and useful architectural tool when you want to show the internal workings of your structure or of your building, and you don't necessarily get the opportunity to see that view from the outside. So in our case, what we need to do first of all is strip out any unnecessary elements from our scene. So you can start in your layer manager and just hide any layers that you don't need. And if there are objects that are very dense, for example, our planting, we have a couple of 100 or 1,000 tree objects, we can go and hide those as well. Generally what I do when I work with things like the section, as I'm going to show you shortly, is I go and make a copy of the entire scene and rename it to, for example, name of the project _ section. And I'm not necessarily going to work on my final model because you may go and damage some things in the process as you go and reduce the complexity of the model in order to create that section for yourself. So it's a good idea just to do this on the side of your main workflow of the evolution of the project and see it just as a technical tool that comes in and gives you some assistance. So things like people we also have turned off, which is perfect. So what I'm going to do is start off with one of the objects, and then I'm going to copy the section across to the others. So I'm going to just select a few simple objects to start off with. And for example, I'm going to choose everything that's on the ground floor plane, and perhaps I can even choose these pavilions too. And then I will choose to do a section for the building separately. So I'm now going to just make sure that all of these are selected. I'm going to isolate it, and I'm going to join all these together in a group. So group them all together. And then onto that group, you can basically add a slice modifier. Now you'll see this orange square that comes into your scene is your slice plane. You need to right click and rotate that slice plane. So let's go and rotate it by -90 degrees in the Y direction. And you can then go and remove either the top or remove the bottom. You can then adjust that slice plane in plan, and we can actually look at this in plan itself as we just drag this slice plane around. So once you're happy with the position of the slice plane itself, you can go and take that modifier. You can then go and copy it onto the other objects. So I'm going to go here and exit out of my isolation. And the other objects, just be careful that you don't try and slice through too many very dense objects, because it is going to take up a lot of time for that calculation to happen. So I'm just going to give it a go and try to do what I just mentioned you shouldn't do. And basically I'm going to group all of these objects together, and I'm just going to try to copy that slice modifier directly and see how quickly we can get that done. So you can see already that most of it has been sliced through. What hasn't really happened is that we don't have that tower in place, which I wanted to have visible. So I'm going to turn off this slice modifier here. I'm going to look in my top view, and I'm just going to adjust that slice plane to be in the center of that tower. Basically, the two slice planes need to align with each other so that we can get that line to basically correspond. So I'm going to move it across until I eventually find that same position. And once I'm happy, I can then go and turn my slice back on. Now it may take a few seconds for that to update, but once it is updated, you can look at your building in 3D, and there is our section. Now this element over here hasn't been sliced. These are basically our solar or our sun or our light elements. So these you can go and slice separately as well, or just go and delete them because you don't really see them at all within your section. So this is something now that we can go and render. So I'm going to hit pause quickly, render this, and just have a look at what we are left with. So here's our render, and we can still see that there are some areas that can be improved just to make the section look good. And that is why I said it's a good idea to work on your scene as a copy, because you may want to add some extra lighting, perhaps on this bridge, perhaps you want to go and modify how the space is looking, and perhaps you also want to add some more detailing into this lift shaft. Certain areas of the mesh itself or of the space frame will also have to be cut out in order to make this look correct, but all of this can happen once you go and modify your project and modify your file to correspond with where that section is being cut. So this pretty much brings me to the end of this lesson. It's a really simple modifier to go and add onto any object, but what I wanted to show you is that you can add it onto a huge group of objects, and even very dense objects and groups like these, like the space frame that we have, can easily be sliced through, and we can create these sectional type of renders. So this is definitely something that I enjoy doing, and I hope it'll help you as well in any of your future projects. So in the last lesson, the next lesson coming up, I'm just going to look at a few higher render settings and basically show you how I would, or how far I would push the render settings if I wanted to get a still relatively quick render out that I could go and present and print out for a project. So I'm going to then finish off and conclude the course in the next lesson, and you can then just have a look at that and see what the result is of our entire course and of the evolution of our design.